is how the Axis rose to dominate the entire globe. But to understand how the world fell into absolute horror, we must go back to 1941 and see how 1941 and 1945 didn't end like our timeline books, they say. With superior leadership and industry, the new regime's forced to a total Allied capitulation. But the signing of the peace treaties wasn't the end of the chaos. It was just the beginning of a global exodus unknown to the Freedom Pact. A global genocide is occurring. And well, let's get into it. And well, first we need to go to the Americas where war breaks out. What a shock. Peru forms a coalition with, well, Bolivia. And this becomes known as the South American War. And well, in it, they invade Ecuador, which quickly leads to Colombia saying no. Which leads into Venezuela saying yes, war is great. Which leads into Brazil saying, can you guys stop? Which leads to Argentina saying, grow up. And Paraguay saying, I don't like this world. And everybody else saying, well, too bad. And Brazil saying, we love the Paraguay. Who doesn't like Paraguay? If you don't like Paraguay, I'm sending you to war. If World War III starts and you don't like them, you're going to war. Oh wait, that's a good... But let's get into it. Within Ecuador, the Equatorial War is very rapid paced as they quickly move north. Not that slow. As they quickly move north and they encircle Quito. Oh, Quito should be over here, but it's over a bit. Oops. Who cares? With the fall of Quito, leads to a quick fall here. With the Colombia-Venezuela war breaking out, just part of the Americas War, and they move into Guyana, which is British Guyana, to take the Essequibo region because it's full of resources, and who doesn't like resources but evil nations? With Paraguay in horror, because, well, Paraguay, I'm sorry, Paraguay, I love you. Not actually, I don't love a country. Well, I do, but I don't love Paraguay, unfortunately. I do love Paraguay. I feel bad for them. Like, yeah. But they get a better timeline here, and you may be like, how? They're basically getting invaded again. How is this a good timeline? And to that I say, let's skip fronts, and now to Operation Barbarossa. And well, it leads to absolute chaos on the Eastern Front, with the Russians being shocked. And not only is it just Operation Barbarossa, it's also the continuation war. And yes, I marked a bunch of cities in Central Asia. Yes, could have I marked more? Definitely yes. Did I mark enough? Yes. Do I care if you think it's not enough? Not totally. But I mean, this is our biggest operation, and it's going to have a big plot twist. That's all you get for now. You need to guess what it is. Well, let's see how much of a chaos rips out on the Eastern Front. And also, don't forget Finland. They must start the continuation war. Do they really like the Nazis? Who knows? You'll know more about where they stand at the end of today's video. How big of a chaos, you may be asking? Oh, yeah. Yeehaw! And to those who are questioning, no, I'm not Texan, as Lithuania's parts fall. With these nations eventually starting to seize Leningrad, and they push deep into Ukraine. The seize Leningrad, and a push deep into Ukraine, with an Italian push into the Caucasus. Well, let's go to Japan, who has attacked Pearl Harbor. And they take this opportunity to take over the Philippines. Yes. The United States of America is now in this war, everyone. As the American War is raging in the South, the United States of America is forced into the war, with them viewing they're going to win. But you better hope they do. For the sake of humanity, you better pray that this doesn't go as bad as it's going to go. Well, unfortunately, too late. But anyways, I give up on you. And let's just watch the next part. As the Allied forces struggle in the Middle East, as the Middle Eastern War breaks out, with Iran joining. Iran joins, and North Yemen joins. Why does Iran join? Oh, that's simple. They didn't join this for no reason. They joined this because there's something I like to refer to as, yes, we need oil. With the British coming in from the south, and the Russians coming in from the north, with major cities collapsing. But at this point, Axis, with their superior abilities in this war, managed to push forces into the south of Iran and push the British back towards British India, and they managed to push the Soviets out of Tehran. Why did I bring North Yemen, and you may be wondering? Yeah, the Arabia War is what it was for. With them moving from the port city of Aden to, not port city of Aden, from Sana's to recapture Port Safi, as they move up north into Saudi Arabia. As Iraq from the north moves in with the goal of capturing Riyadh. And from this section they also move in, along with Italian forces. And well, the Middle East front is on the verge of collapse, as North Yemen, with the help of northern forces, managing to start pushing into major cities, along with the Iraq forces. They eventually take 3 cities. And then they move up as Iraq takes Riyadh, with northern Saudi Arabia falling. And well, the collapse of the desert has thus initiated. And well, yes, they fully collapse, with the Brits being shocked. And well, thus, the Black Gold offensive was a success. And well, let's go to South America, where they meet their demise. And what do I mean by that? Well, for starters, Venezuela is pushed out of the Essequibo region. Thus, with this, Venezuela is quickly attacked, with Venezuela, along with the United States forces, moving in, and they take this city. As from the other front, Brazilian forces move in from Guyana, and they quickly move in to take Caracas. Thus, the nation of Venezuela has crumbled down. And yes, this island too, just south of the, Dutch West Indies. And well, let's move south as they manage to take Quito back, with Quito falling back. The Peru campaign may begin, with Brazil launching an offensive to take Lima, with Lima falling, thus securing victory over Peru. And well, how do they get victory over? Well, yes, they move into Bolivia to take La Paz and Sucre, with them taking, I forget which one first, but they take them both. With the forces of Bolivia surrendering, and then the full nation falls into Allied control. Well, Argentina, realizing this isn't a good sign, starts to fall. With Brazil failing to get in more nations, them, along with Paraguay, march down towards Buenos Aires. As they march down, they quickly seize lands that's big. Yes, big lands. And then they start moving in and encircling the place. With them doing that, Argentina's brought out of the war. The Falklands stayed in British hands. And well, this allowed the monstrous killers, a big, big advance in Africa. And I don't mean just big. Also, Liberia, you're getting invaded. Yeah, I don't make the rules. And well, thus like this, the African front begins in the collapse, with them moving deep into the Belgium Congo. In the French Africa, Free France, at this point, they start collapsing. Well, the Nazi war machine and the Italian machine, along with Spanish, Iran, and Iraq, they're making big advances. And well, we're at this point where we're about to just continue collapsing Africa, as it's the African collapse. Well, they finally reach the coast near Congo and they move into Portuguese colonies. Now they're moving into Nigeria, British Nigeria, with West Africa being at the collapse, with all of West Africa having collapsed at this point, with the beginning of a retreat from this region beginning. As they start retreating, the British start, the French start, the Belgians start. Within this area, Portuguese Angola falls, and then they start moving deep into South Africa as they take back Namibia. And then move down to Cape Town as they move towards Pretoria, Johannesburg, and a few other cities. As they manage to collapse, eventually the Portuguese in Africa give up. Free France and Africa is forced to surrender. I think that's all of France, basically. Well, Afghanistan finally decides it's time to join the Axis. Why do they join the Axis? Well, a joint campaign happens against British Raj. Oops, this isn't supposed to be on this layer, so I need to go to this layer. Well, you gotta erase stuff. And let's get ready for the big attack. A joint attack on India, as China's in the verge of basically collapse. But let's go down here and invade British Raj. As I move into Pakistan in British Raj, with the Soviets struggling on multiple fronts, there's nothing they can really do to help, because they are struggling in northern Iran as much as they would be struggling in Ukraine today. And they take Karachi and start basically taking over it from this side. And on the other side, they start taking over Bengal, with them taking Dhaka and moving even further, with the Axis dream of victory growing substantially. And well, it's not good. As they move in, take Delhi, a few other places around. Collapse of this part, with all of the Bengal falling, with them moving south. A Japanese landing on Sri Lanka begins, quickly allowing them to land in southern India, which becomes India as they declare independence as they're collapsing, knowing it doesn't do much. And then they move through the populated area. And well, with the British forces withdrawing, quickly this becomes the front. And then the rest falls, with Japan declaring one of its biggest victories. And at this point, we see what happens in this front in Asia, which is very major. And well, in the south from Vietnam, they move north. They take a few cities. They take the rest of the coast. They take a few more cities. The collapse of here happens. And then, well, the beginning of Russia's demise begins. Within the hour timeline, St. Petersburg falls. Earlier than our timeline, they advance to here. They quickly start moving into Moscow, with Finnish forces managing the Finnish seizing Karela and the Kola Peninsula. With Russia in a crisis as this happened, they're like, well, this is fine. With them completely being pushed out of this front in Iran. With Iran moving in to seize oil, basically. With the Caucasus front eventually connecting with the north. With this advance from the south, it makes it possible for Stalingrad to fall and a few other areas as they start moving into the Kazakh SSR. But they eventually start getting to here. There's a big advance here, more advanced, with the forces getting stuck here. You may be wondering what is going on. At this point, you might be like, what is going on? This isn't good. Yep, and you'd be right. This is absolutely gut-wrenchingly bad. But I'll show you how bad it is in part 3. You'll see how bad this world is. You'll see how cruel it is. How backwards it is. How broken it is. And with a big event happening. And you might be saying, where? Well, before we get there, we'll invade the Central Asia areas. And well, Japan joins against the Soviets. You thought that non-aggression treaty would hold? Nope. The Japanese are seizing their once-in-a-lifetime opportunity as Mongolia falls. And then they move into Tanyutuva. In the north, they start moving north, island hopping until they get into Siberia, which they use this to take some cities. You might be thinking, well, the Russian winter will end this. Yep, the winter that doesn't come. Ooh, now that's harsh. With Yakutsk falling and they move into Siberia even deeper. With the German forces eventually getting across the, well, Ural Mountains. And well, so is the Japanese get very far. And they're advancing very rapidly. The sun stops setting as the sun has rose forever. The Japanese Empire runs across the globe. At this point, Stalin is finally seized as he tried to retreat with the Russians. And he is not ending well. It's not a fun day for him. And well, Ireland takes the opportunity to annex Britain. And then they align to them. Why do they annex areas of the United Kingdom? Because they can. With them taking it over, thus reclaiming the Irish Republic. But then they make a new move. They move towards British American allies, along with all North America, with creating the Freedom Pact. Yes, the Freedom Pact goes to war with the world. Yes, thus the Freedom Pact is fully created at this point, hoping to be able to withhold in Australia, with Australia invasion about to occur. But what they didn't know was the Japanese would seize a bunch more island, they would island hop a bit more, and then land in northern New Zealand. Thus, now they can build a naval blockade on this front into Australia as they land around Darwin, and use this to move into Queensland. As they move south, taking Brisbane, Melbourne, and a few other cities, then they take the capital, and at this point Australia is basically outmatched. And the emus, to further put pain to it, beat up the farmers. Yes, not good. Bad emus, bad emus, bad emus. Yes, we're having comic relief. Because this is the worst timeline, absolutely. Do you know what they're doing in these front lines? Well, wait for the next part, because that's when you're going to realize how bad this world truly is. With the Japanese Empire, eventually the Allies realize there's nothing they can do, as they get forced, I mean forced, to negotiate. How does the negotiations go? Well, the Freedom Pact gets all this along with that. Germany, Italy, and Japan divides the world up between each other. So let's go see the aftermath of this peace treaty. And well, in the New World Order, there were no bells to toll for the fallen, simply dropped like cattle in the shadows, with only the monstrosity of the guns to mark their passing. Yes, very harsh, I know. But let's look at this world order. And well, a lot you can notice. Look at Italy stretching into the Ural Mountains. And then they have allies in Iraq, Yemen, Iran, Spain, and Bulgaria join them alongside them. Well, yes, there's cities there. And yeah, as you can see, into Central Asia, a bunch is annexed. This is a Caucasus state, North Caucasus state, Volgograd, Ukraine, Italian Ukraine. And Italy annexes Crimea. They also annex Istanbul and make this. They also annex around Nigeria, with Africa annexing a big chunk, making it South African puppet, as that becomes German Africa. And well, Liberia stays free. And well, then we see Germany, northern France is a puppet. They spread into Russia with multiple puppets. Japan, they dominate East Asia, and they have an ally in Afghanistan. Afghanistan. As this ally in Afghanistan is a big deal, as that's what helped them win. But India got partitioned into Kerala, and it got partitioned into multiple states. India, which is a Japanese puppet. We also got Kerala in the south. In the far south, we got Sri Lanka, with us having Bangladesh and what would I call that? Bengal. And then we got Kazakhstan freed. Yes, the Sikhs get a free state, although it's Japanese order. And this isn't fun. And then and as you can see, the Japanese are committing war crimes like they're going out of style. The Germans are committing crimes against humanity as it's going out of style. Italians are doing it all. Trust me. And well, let's look in South America. Well, we see big expanders, Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, and then we see these puppets created in Peru, Bolivia, and Argentina. And you might say, why is Venezuela gone? Because it got 8. Yes, Venezuela was a very, very, very tasty dinner. And well, as you can see, this global world order has been overthrown. A world led by hate, anger, bigotry, murder, betrayal, genocide, and failure. It's not a good world. Grim. Well, you might have enjoyed this war, but the reason I haven't answered to comments for a pretty long time, I missed 6 months of comments, that's honesty, is because I was at war with engineering, and I hope this joke actually worked, and you don't think I'm making an excuse. But let's get into it. Now we're basically into the last part, with the Freedom Pack reinforcing its borders, and millions are fleeing the fascist shadow. You may say, how do they leave? Yes, they go in Finland, they go in Sweden, they cross the ocean, mass exodus. And well, with the massive exodus, tons of Catholics and Jews are fleeing persecution, as even the Pope and the papal authority have to flee out of Europe. They are forced out. Anyone who remains could be killed or anything worse. They have no chance but to get out. Every Jew, Catholic, and clergy member of the Catholic Church must escape this horror that's looming over Europe. That Catholic cathedrals are left empty across Europe. No mass may go on Sunday in Europe without the threat of persecution. All the Catholics are leaving by boats, and they're clutching rosaries like their life depends on it. Their faith is so important that they are willing to leave their life behind in search of a new one, as they have been forced out of their homeland, treated like animals in their homeland. They have been forced out, and the leadership of the Nazis and Italians would rip them apart if they could, just as bad as Rome. Secretly joined the Democratic Pact, also known as Freedom Pact. And well, as you can see, they are completely surrounded by the Axis on this front. So if they publicly done it, they can easily get invaded with forces coming in from here, in from here. In the world, it looks like submission. But it is the people in the shadows you need to worry about. In this New World Order, something darker is lurking in the shadows. And it is scary. Well, at least they have this access. A fragile, terrifying peace shatters over the globe. But on paper, control is easier than in existence. With millions forming resistance networks, fracturing Tokyo's puppet states, unknown to Japan, they are closing on the leadership, plotting the end. But over in Europe, Berlin and Rome is starting to split. This world order of evil, darkness, absolute horror, betrayal is about to destroy itself. Leave a comment below of your opinions on this series. Hit the subscribe button and stay ready, because coming Tuesday, we leave the past behind and dive headfirst into a modern era to see exactly how the East could defeat the West in a modern World War III. I'll see you then. Wild Mapper out, and click on one of the videos.